What if everything you've been chasing would have come to you? The moment you stopped chasing it, you probably don't remember the exact moment you started gripping life so tightly. Maybe it was after a heartbreak, or a missed opportunity, or maybe one day, without even realizing it, you just got tired of uncertainty, and so you started trying to control everything: your schedule, your relationships, your future. You thought that by holding everything together, nothing would fall apart. And for a while, it worked. Kind of. You became the planner, the problem solver, the one who always had a backup plan. But somewhere along the line, the pressure became constant. Your mind started spinning even in your sleep. You checked your phone too much. You overanalyzed texts. You held on to people who no longer held space for you. You kept knocking on doors that never opened, thinking maybe if you knocked harder they would. But what if the answer isn't in the hustle? What if life isn't asking you to do more, but to release? What if the very things you're hoping for are already trying to reach you, but they can't? Because you won't let go. This isn't a story about giving up. It's about discovering what was meant for you when you finally stop forcing what isn't. There's a quiet truth most people don't realize until they're exhausted. Holding on too tightly often keeps the very thing you want from ever arriving. We live in a world obsessed with control over outcomes, timing other people's feelings, even the image we project to the world. But the more you try to grip life into submission, the more it slips through your fingers like water. Why? Because nothing real can breathe under pressure. And love, purpose, peace, they all need space to land. Think about it. Have you ever been so desperate for something to work that you squeezed the life out of it? A relationship you clung to out of fear? A job you forced yourself to love? A dream that stopped inspiring you, but you couldn't let go of because it had become your identity? In your effort to control, you became closed, tense, distracted. You missed the whispers life was sending your way, the subtle signs, the quiet opportunities, the people who showed up gently but couldn't stay because there was no room. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It means softening your grip. It means creating space in your mind, your body, and your spirit for alignment to happen naturally. Not because you pushed, but because you allowed. And in that space, something begins to shift. Your breath gets deeper, your thoughts get quieter, your energy becomes lighter. And suddenly, things start arriving. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, like waves meeting the shore. Letting go is how you say to the universe, I trust you now. It's not a surrender of effort, it's a surrender of resistance. And when resistance falls away, life begins to meet you in ways you never imagined. Not because you chased it, but because you made space for it to arrive. Most people think control is a form of strength, that if you plan well enough, prepare deeply enough, stay vigilant long enough, nothing will go wrong. You've probably lived by that unspoken rule: stay alert, stay ready, and nothing will fall apart. But here's the hard truth. Control isn't strength, it's fear dressed up as responsibility. It's survival masquerading as strategy, and it's costing you more than you realize. When you try to manage every outcome, you're not operating from confidence, you're operating from anxiety. From the belief that if you don't orchestrate every detail, you'll lose everything. You're afraid that if you stop micromanaging your relationships, people will leave. That if you stop obsessing over results, you'll fail. That if you let go, everything will fall apart. But the only thing falling apart is you. What no one tells you is that true power doesn't come from control, it comes from presence, from trust, from your ability to stay grounded even when life doesn't follow your script. Because it won't. Life isn't a spreadsheet. It's a storm, a rhythm, a wild and beautiful unfolding. And your attempt to cage it, to tame every variable, only disconnects you from its magic. The fear underneath control is raw. It's old. It comes from places you rarely speak about. Maybe it was childhood chaos that taught you nothing is safe unless you hold it tightly. Maybe it was heartbreak that left you believing love must be earned through effort. Either way, you built your life on a silent rule: never let go. And now, you're exhausted. But you don't need to be in charge of everything to feel safe. What if safety isn't in controlling outcomes, but in trusting your own ability to navigate whatever comes? That shift from fear to trust is where real power lives. And it's been waiting for you this whole time. You've been taught your whole life that effort is everything. Work harder, grind longer, push through, and eventually, life will reward you. And maybe it did for a while. You got the grades, the job, the approval. You chased goals with discipline, fought your way through doors, and earned the right to be seen. But at some point, something shifted. The results stopped feeling fulfilling. The success didn't quiet the noise. You realized you were exhausted, but still empty. Because here's what nobody told you: effort without alignment is a form of self-betrayal. It's chasing outcomes that were never truly meant for you just because the world told you they mattered. It's setting goals based on fear of being left behind, not desire to move forward. And that kind of striving, it doesn't elevate you. It drains you. Alignment feels different. Alignment isn't about giving up on effort. It's about knowing where to place it. It's the quiet wisdom of choosing what feels right, not just what looks right. It's learning to listen to your body, your intuition, your energy. It's understanding that when you keep pushing against a locked door, maybe it's not your door. And the moment you stop forcing something, strange happens. Life starts to open in directions you didn't even see before. This doesn't mean life becomes easy, but it becomes honest. And that honesty is lighter than effort ever was. When you act from alignment, you still work, but the work feels alive. You still move forward, but the movement doesn't grind you down. You begin to trust your inner compass more than the world's expectations. And that shift is everything. Because you weren't born just to perform. You were born to flow, to resonate, to walk paths that choose you back. And alignment is how you find them. We grow up in a culture that glorifies effort. From the first time you're praised for working harder than someone else, the message becomes clear. More effort means more value. More hustle means more worth. But what happens when your whole identity becomes built on striving? You wake up one day and realize you're exhausted, not just physically, but spiritually. You've been chasing things for so long that you don't even know if they're yours anymore. The truth is, effort has its place, but effort without alignment becomes a form of self-abandonment. You keep pushing, grinding, proving, hoping that if you just give a little more, life will finally give back. But the reality is, the things that are meant for you don't require that kind of suffering. They respond not to pressure, but to presence. Not to force, but to flow. You've been told that dreams require blood, sweat, and tears. But no one told you that when something is truly aligned with your soul, it doesn't drain you. It draws you. It calls to you. It fits. And when it fits, the effort feels different. It becomes joyful, peaceful. Even when it's hard, it feels like truth. So maybe it's not about doing more. Maybe it's about doing what resonates. Maybe your next chapter isn't hidden in the next 100 steps. Maybe it's waiting just on the other side of stillness. The kind of stillness that helps you hear what your own life is asking for. When you align, you don't stop moving. You start moving from a place that sustains you, that nourishes you, and that more than any hustle is what will carry you exactly where you were meant to go. Surrender. It's a word that scares people. It sounds like weakness, like giving up, like losing. But that's only because we've been taught the wrong definition. Surrender isn't collapsing, it's awakening. It's not retreat, it's recognition. The moment you realize that not everything in your life is meant to be controlled, fixed, or fought for you, unlock a deeper kind of intelligence, the kind that doesn't scream, but listens. Because wisdom doesn't always come dressed as clarity. Sometimes it arrives in the form of fatigue, the kind of exhaustion that says, "I can't keep pushing this boulder uphill." That quiet moment when your heart whispers what your mind has been too proud to hear, "This isn't yours to carry anymore." That's not failure, that's freedom. Surrender is the wisdom of discernment, knowing when your effort becomes resistance, knowing when your helping becomes enabling, knowing when your attachment becomes self-harm, and having the courage to let go, not because you don't care, but because you finally do. We think strength means holding on, but real strength is knowing when to step aside, to stop interrupting what life is trying to do on its own. You are not the architect of every bridge. Sometimes your only job is to stop standing in the way of it being built. And when you do, something changes. Not always outside, but within. Your shoulders soften. Your breath deepens. You stop reacting from fear and start responding from presence. You begin to trust that life knows more than your plans do. That wisdom is not about being in control, but about being connected to yourself, to reality, to something greater. Surrender isn't the end of effort. It's the beginning of alignment. And when you arrive there, you don't feel defeated. You feel free. You don't realize how loud your life has become until you finally sit in silence and hear the truth. For most people, stillness feels unnatural. It's uncomfortable, even threatening. We're conditioned to fill every space with noise, every pause with productivity, every moment with motion. But beneath that constant activity is something we rarely access: clarity. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand your attention. It waits. And it only emerges when you finally slow down enough to listen. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It's the presence of meaning. And yet we run from it. Why? Because when things go quiet, you have to face yourself. You hear the thoughts you've been suppressing. You feel the emotions you've been numbing. You notice the tension you've been carrying for so long it started to feel normal. And that's where the real clarity begins. When you stop spinning, your nervous system calms. Your breath deepens. The fog in your mind starts to clear. You begin to see that many of the obstacles in your path were created by your own expectations, your deadlines, your belief that everything had to happen a certain way. In stillness, you realize the path wasn't blocked, it was buried beneath your urgency. This isn't about inaction, it's about awareness. It's about moving from a place of intention, not impulse. In the quiet, your intuition gets louder. Your inner voice, the one that always knew the way, starts to speak again. And when you hear it, you remember who you are beneath the pressure, beneath the story, beneath the noise. Stillness is the doorway, not to escape, but to return, to realign, to rediscover what was true all along. And when clarity comes, it doesn't overwhelm you, it gently restores you. It's easy to confuse focus with fixation. You tell yourself you're just being determined, committed, disciplined. But deep down, you can feel it, the grip, tightening the breath, shortening the tunnel vision, narrowing around one outcome, one person, one version of how life must unfold. And without realizing it, you've built a prison around possibility. Obsession doesn't feel like a cage at first. It feels like purpose, like direction. But eventually, it begins to consume more than it creates. You replay the same scenarios in your head, checking your phone like it holds the future, trying to decode silence like it's a secret message. You stay loyal to one plan, one dream, one version of love, not because it's alive, but because you're afraid of what letting go might mean. But here's the truth. No one wants to face, the more you cling to something that isn't flowing, the more you block what is. You stare at a single closed door, convinced it's the only one. All the while, life is quietly opening others behind you doors, to growth, to peace, to people who see you without needing to be chased. But obsession drowns out those signals. It makes you blind to the invitations that don't match your script. Letting go of obsession isn't failure. It's not giving up hope. It's remembering you're not here to beg for breadcrumbs from a life that's already moved on. You're here to step back and let the full picture reveal itself, to notice what only becomes visible when you're no longer forcing the frame. Because when you release your fixation, you regain your freedom. And in that freedom, possibility returns quietly, respectfully, and always with better timing than you could have ever planned. There's a moment, subtle, almost unnoticeable, when you go from chasing to attracting. And it changes everything. You've probably spent years trying to prove you're enough, trying to earn your place in someone's life, trying to stay relevant, visible, wanted. You poured energy into texts that went unanswered, into plans that kept falling through, into dreams that felt like they kept slipping further away the more tightly you gripped them. But here's what you didn't know: neediness repels. Not because you're unworthy, but because desperation speaks louder than desire. When you chase something from a place of lack, whether it's love, success, or validation, your energy tells the world, I don't believe I can receive this freely, so I must force it to stay. And that signal, people feel it, even if they don't know how to name it. But when you let go, truly let go, something in your presence shifts. Your shoulders relax, your breath deepens. You stop trying to convince the world you're worth choosing and start embodying the fact that you already are. And that shift is magnetic. You stop yelling into the void. You start listening. You stop over-explaining. You start observing. You begin to move from a different place, a quieter place, where your energy says, I am whole with or without this outcome. And that's when life begins to respond differently. Invitations arrive that you didn't ask for. People show up who don't require you to shrink, chase, or perform. It's not magic, it's alignment. Because you attract not what you want, but what you believe you're ready for. And readiness doesn't shout, it radiates. You don't have to chase what's already yours. You just have to stop pushing it away with the noise of proving. Letting go isn't just about releasing people or outcomes. It's about returning to something you lost along the way, your ability to trust yourself. Somewhere between the disappointments and the betrayals, the mixed signals and the shattered plans, you stopped believing that your own inner voice was enough. You started outsourcing your worth to how others responded to you. You waited for messages to feel wanted, for validation to feel seen, for permission to feel safe. But here's the truth. No one ever teaches you self-trust is the foundation for everything you're searching for. And it doesn't come from being perfect or getting it right every time. It comes from watching yourself survive what once broke you, from honoring your boundaries even when it makes others uncomfortable, from listening to the quiet knowing inside you that says, this doesn't feel right, and that's enough reason to walk away. When you let go of the need to be chosen, you begin to choose yourself again. You stop looking for signs from the outside and start noticing the ones within. That gut feeling you silenced, it was never wrong. You were just afraid to listen. That instinct to rest instead of push, that's your nervous system trying to heal. Rebuilding self-trust isn't loud. It happens in private moments when you say no without explaining why, when you stop over-apologizing for needing space, when you give yourself the closure no one else gave you. And piece by piece, you come back to yourself. Not the version of you shaped by fear, but the one grounded in truth. Because when you trust yourself again, life doesn't feel so chaotic. You stop grasping, you start receiving. And in that still, steady place, you remember you were never lost, just disconnected from the one voice that never lied to you. We're taught to measure progress by movement, that something is only happening if we're doing, building, climbing. So when life slows down, or when we choose to stop, it feels wrong, unnatural, even dangerous. But here's the paradox. The most profound changes don't happen in motion. They happen in the pause. That quiet space after you let go of something you held too tightly. the silence that settles in after the noise of striving fades. It's not emptiness, it's incubation. A sacred stillness where clarity can finally surface without competition, where you're no longer distracted by what's next and for once fully present with what's now. It's in that pause that your nervous system begins to repair, that your heart gets to grieve without rushing, that the versions of you who survived so much finally have space to exhale. And in that exhale, you realize you don't need to keep proving. You don't need to chase anything right now. You just need to be. And that's where transformation begins, not in the effort, but in the allowing. The pause teaches you how to listen again, how to notice what your body has been whispering for years. It reveals what's been misaligned, what's been forced, what's been costing you more than it gave. You begin to feel the subtle pull of what's right, not because it's loud, but because it's true. Most people miss this part. They mistake stillness for stagnation, and so they run. But the ones who stay, who breathe through the discomfort, who resist the urge to fill the space, they discover something rare: renewal. Not because they fought for it, but because they allowed it. Real change doesn't come from the push, it comes from the pause, and the courage to trust what rises in the stillness. We've been conditioned to believe that freedom is the ability to control everything, that the more we force, the more power we have. But real freedom doesn't come from gripping life until your knuckles turn white. It comes from allowing life to meet you where you are, without the need to manipulate every detail, without turning every moment into a battlefield for perfection or performance. You may have spent years trying to push your way through life, chasing outcomes, chasing people, chasing certainty. But all that pushing came at a cost: your peace. And here's the truth: most people aren't ready to face, when you stop forcing, you don't lose control. You gain yourself. Allowing doesn't mean you stop showing up. It means you stop showing up in panic. You stop making decisions from scarcity. You stop begging life to bend to your timeline. Instead, you begin to trust that what's meant for you will find you, not because you chased it relentlessly, but because you aligned with it. Your presence becomes more powerful than your pressure. There's a quiet kind of strength in allowing. It's the strength of knowing who you are even when things are uncertain. It's the strength to pause, to wait, to hold space for something greater than your own expectations. And that space, that openness, is where real life begins to breathe. Because the moment you stop trying to bend the river, you begin to flow with it. And what you discover in that flow isn't passivity, it's power. A power rooted in surrender, not struggle. A power that doesn't need to dominate to be felt. Freedom doesn't come from having everything under control. It comes from releasing the illusion that you ever needed to. And in that release, you don't just find peace, you find yourself. The deeper message behind all of this is simple but radical. You don't have to force what's meant for you. In a world that glorifies control, constant striving, and hustle culture, the idea of letting go can feel counterintuitive, even irresponsible. But the truth is, real power comes from knowing when to step back, when to stop chasing and start listening, when to trust that alignment will do what effort alone cannot. This isn't about being passive or giving up on your dreams. It's about shifting the energy behind your actions from fear to faith, from pressure to presence. It's learning to recognize the difference between what feeds you and what drains you, and having the courage to release what no longer resonates, even if you once thought it was everything. Start by observing where in your life you're gripping too tightly. Ask yourself, am I acting from self-trust or from the fear of not being enough? Then practice pausing. Practice allowing. You might be surprised how many things begin to shift the moment you stop trying to bend them into place, because peace doesn't come from perfect plans. It comes from alignment. And the life that's truly yours will never require you to betray yourself to keep it.